Good morning, my beautiful people. I hope you had an amazing weekend. I really hope your weekend was a very, very great and good one. This is a new week. Today, I want us to talk about understanding your risk exposure as a small or medium sized business. This is another beautiful week. So, we need to have a good understanding of what our risk exposure looks like as a small or medium sized business. The first thing I want you to know is that cyber risk is not always obvious until it becomes too late. And as for those of us that are actually business owners, especially small business owners, we don't realize how exposed we are until we face a breach or some form of disruption. I remember a few years ago, close to 7 years now, I got back home from Father's Day that day. It was a Sunday. It was a Father's Day. And on that Father's Day, I got back home to find out that the house had been burgled. Very interesting day. We all took my dad out for lunch and I think some form of dinner. We had a little outing. By the time I got back home, I discovered that the house had been burgled. So we called in the police. And when we called in the police, a lot of things were missing. My daughter's coin jar, she was very upset. She cried. I had some amount of money in the house that went missing. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of things did get missing, even though they were things that they were not so massive. The things like because the TV was big, they were unable to carry that. But the things that were missing were tangible but small sized. I'm going to use the word tangible but appropriately sized. But one of the lessons I learned during the process was that when we called in the police, after he had filed the report, the policeman gave me what's called an education. I'm going to call it education. He gave me a good walkthrough of why the house was burgled, why we were a target for the burglars. That was a very interesting lesson for me that day. Now, a year later, the reason I'm saying this is because I learned a very important lesson during the process. A year later, the same Father's Day, the next year, the entire neighborhood was burgled again, but my house was not a target. My house was not burgled because all the measures that the policeman had told me about, all the places that he told me we were vulnerable, I had already put those measures in place. He told me to put in the burglar door. He told me to actually fix some parts of the windows. He told me there were some things that we were putting by the door that we should not have put because they were attracting thieves. And most importantly, he told us to change the alarm company that we were using at that time because they have been known to be inefficient and ineffective. What I'm saying is the next year, every other person that actually faced that crisis was wondering why our house was not burgled and why we were not a victim. And I explained that it was because I asked questions of the policeman. What can I do to ensure that this does not happen again? And it did help me. Yes, the insurance covered it, but it was a very tormenting period for us. Now, what am I saying? The reason it is very important for you to have a good understanding of your risk exposure is because it allows you to be able to spot all the possible entry points that an attacker can come in through. That way, you can lock them down ever before you are breached. I experienced the breach. There was an incident. I was robbed. I was burgled before I knew I should actually know what to do the next time. But it never happened again. But in this case, I am telling you what to do so that you can lock it down ever before it happens. So that is one of the reasons why this session is very, very important, because I want us to shine a light on those hidden risks in your security. I'm going to call it your security posture, those hidden risks in your business that could actually make you vulnerable to cyber attacks. I need you to be able to identify them. I need you to be able to prioritize them so that your business can be safe as well as resilient. Now, what are some of the things that I want you to have a good understanding of when it comes to the risk exposure in your business? Number one, the first thing I want you to do is identify which assets are critical to your business needs. Now, what that means in essence is that some people don't really know the kind of, and when I use the word assets, I'm talking about the security or the digital assets in your organization. A lot of people don't even know what they are working with. You need to look at the customer information or customer data that you have. You need to look at which systems are actually payment systems. You need to look at which one actually has what is considered to be trade secrets, your formulas, your intellectual properties, employee information, financial details, as well as those systems that are considered to be critical business systems. If you are the kind of person that uses a cash register, what system is that cash register connected to? Where is the information going to? Those are some of the assets that are very, very important that you know. Those are some of the assets that I need you to pay attention to. Now, the second thing that I want you to know is I want you to be able to pinpoint the threats or vulnerabilities. I know a lot of people will ask me, oh, I don't know how to look at the threats. I don't know how to look at the problems. But you need to understand what is going on in your industry. What kind of industry are you working with? Are you in the healthcare industry? Are you in the financial sector? Are you in the retail industry? There are some threats that have been considered to be what is called unique to that particular sector. They are considered to be unique to that industry. Ransomware is, I will use the word, it's a threat that is very rampant irrespective of the industry. Phishing um, is another threat that is very popular irrespective of the industry. But the truth of the matter is there are some particular industries that have a lot more of this compared to others. Are you having a problem with insider threats? Do you have vendors that you use and you are prone to what is called supplier chain threats or what is called third party threats? Insider threats as well, especially for those of you that actually have staff members that are not very technology savvy, or staff members that are disgruntled, or staff members that you know they are just working for the business, but their soul and spirit is not a part of that business. Now, the third thing I want you to do is do what is called an assessment to understand the likelihood as well as the impact of what some of these vulnerabilities can bring or what a cyber incident can actually cause for you. When I'm talking about the impact, I'm talking about doing what is called an impact assessment. What this means is that you need to have an understanding of what a breach or an attack will do for your business. What that means is that how will it affect you financially? How will it affect you in terms of your operations? How will it affect you legally, especially dependent on your sector or the industry in which you have found yourself, as well as reputation-wise, especially with your customers. Now, when it talks about likelihood is how, I don't want to use the word likely. You need to look at how, you need to be very specific. How will this threat, what is the most rampant situation in which this threats have actually been happened? You need to do what is called a gauge. You need to be able to gauge and see how likely these specific threats can happen, especially based on the kind of technology that you are using. You need to look at what is called your technology stack, your technology environment. You need to look at the user practices. What are your user practices like? What user practices means is that how are you guys using technology in your organization? What are your methods? What are your processes? What kind of procedures are you using? How are people using it? And then you also need to look at your industry trends. That will enable you to have a good understanding of what the impact as well as the likelihood of a cyber incident can be. The fourth thing I want you to do is that take note of all those vulnerabilities that you have observed. A lot of people will be like, oh, I don't really know what vulnerabilities to look for. But the truth of the matter is you don't have to be a technical person to be able to gauge these things. I'm giving you this breakdown so that it's a doable list. I'm giving you this breakdown so you have an understanding of some of the things or processes that you can look out for. When you have an employee that is disgruntled, that is not a technical find. That is not a technical flaw. When you have staff members that are not technology savvy, that is not a technical flaw. Those are things that are actually vulnerabilities for your business. If you are the kind of person that in your organization you don't have what is called a patching cadence, you don't update your systems, or you have given mobile devices. There are some organizations, especially for those of you that are in the retail industry, in the logistics industry, those in the warehouse industry. I have discovered that most of the time you give out mobile devices to your staff members without understanding the security implication of what these mobile devices can do. Some of the staff members will take the mobile devices home and then their children are playing games on them. By playing games on them, they download viruses, they download malware that ends up becoming a problem on your own system when it is connected to the organization's network. Don't come back and tell me I don't have a network. If everyone within your organization are actually able to communicate with each other, irrespective of whether you have put together a network or not, a meshed network or not, no, you have a network whether you are thinking about it or not, because in some way you are actually transferring information between each other, and that can bring not only vulnerabilities, it can actually cause an attack, because if one person is actually penetrated, then every other person can actually be a part of that attack. I want you to look at the weaknesses in your hardware, look at the weaknesses in your processes, look at the weaknesses in your software, look at the weaknesses in the user behavior that attackers can exploit. Look at those weaknesses that can be taken advantage of. It's very important that you look at those weaknesses. Like I said, some things are not technical flaws, they are not technical finds, but you should notice or observe whether it is a weakness on your confused or don't know what to do. In every way, on at every step, they should know this is right, this is wrong. If I don't know what to do, this is who I can ask. If I have a question, this is where I can pinpoint my question to. That is what is called having a strong and good risk aware culture. Now, what are some of the things I need you to start doing today so that you can begin to understand your risk exposure? Like I already explained before, I need you to do what is called a basic risk inventory. What this means is that I want you to create a list of all the assets that you have within your organization. When I'm talking about the assets that you have, I'm talking about the digital assets. Now, what you should do is that when we talk about the digital assets, I'm not only talking about the hardware. I'm not only talking about the software, I'm also talking about the data that you have. If you can actually prioritize and say, oh, this is where this is, put it like a, if we are attacked, we will actually have a problem with this in terms of our operations. We will actually have a problem with this in terms of our financials. We will have a problem with this in terms of our reputation. Create a list of all the assets that you have and put them on what is called a priority list. Create a priority list for them. This is a number one. If we are seriously attacked, this will affect us, a one. If we are attacked, this may not necessarily affect us that badly, a two. If this is not really on our highest point of priorities of things that we should be noticing or doing, a three. Just create what is called a priority list. That way, when you start looking at your risk inventory, you know where to prioritize your efforts. The reason we always emphasize on this is that you need to understand that as a small business, financially, you may not have enough to be able to run your security efforts. But if you have what is called a priority list, you will know how to prioritize your efforts. Like I said, when the policeman gave me a list of the loopholes that I had, it took me more than 6 to 7 months to be able to cover all the lapses. But the truth of the matter was, I was doing them in tranches. And before the next attack ever happened, I was already covered. A lot of people did not know they had to do that, or because they did not listen, or because they did not ask the question. But right now, you are not asking the question. I am telling you because this is a community where we support each other. The second thing I want you to do is identify your possible threats. What are the current threats when it comes to, I will use the word current threat trends that are happening maybe in your geographical location, your industry, wherever you are located right now. Or even in some instances, it does not even have anything to do with the location. It does not have anything to do with the industry, but they are just in trend at this time. I need you to be more aware. I need you to be alert and understand what is going on. Because if you're able to know what is going on, it will allow you to be able to identify the possible threats. Remember that in this instance, I said possible threats. What that means is that they are not yet a threat, but they have a possibility of becoming a threat. That way, you can identify them before you experience an attack. The third thing I want you to do is assess the vulnerabilities within your organization. What this means is that look at all the tools that you are currently using. I will advise that in this instance, you probably bring in a professional, not probably, bring in a professional to be able to help you assess the tools. If you are able to assess the tools, you can identify the technical lapses, you can identify the process gaps, you can identify where the loopholes are, you can identify where the flaws are so that you can lock them down ever before an attack comes in. But the truth is, like I said initially, you are the one that owns your business. So you need to understand that it is very important that you also understand the vulnerabilities in your business. Then I want you to prioritize this risk based on the impact as well as the likelihood. I already explained that initially. I want you to focus your efforts on what can cause the most damage and how likely it can happen. Is it probably? I think the possibility is, what is the possibility of this happening? Is this like a 5? Is this like a 4? Is this like a 10? Put a possibility on it How likely is it to happen? Prioritize the risk based on how you think it can happen, as well as the impact it's going to have on your business. Now, the most important one, I need you to engage your team. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that as owners, as founders, most of the time we tend to do things solo without conferring with our team members. But like I said, this is a team effort. This is not something that you can do on your own. You need to make risk awareness a part of your organization's security culture. You can do this through training as well as reporting mechanisms. Let them know, if I find this, this is who I should talk to. If this happens, this is what I should do. If I observe this, these are the steps I should take. If people make a mistake, do not allow them to be punished for mistakes when they could actually have reported it, and ensure that an attack does not take place. If people feel, or if your staff members feel they do not they are going to be punished for speaking out. They are never going to speak out. And at the end of the day, it's not only going to cost you financially, it's also going to cost you reputation wise. So it is very, very important that you allow risk awareness to be a part of your organization's security culture. Consistent training is important. Put reporting mechanisms in place. That is also very, very important. I want you to take control of your business. I want you to take control of your business security today. You need to start by listing your critical assets. That is very, very important. I have seen a lot of organizations. One of the biggest lessons I have learned, even with large enterprises, is that a lot of organizations do not have what is called asset inventories. Asset inventories. What this means is they don't have a list of the assets in their organization. So it is very, very important that right now, if you don't have one, start creating one and building one. Like I said, this can be done in tranches. Start building an inventory list. What are all the digital assets that you have in your organization? Then start prioritizing the risk that you think may affect those assets. You also need to think about where you are most vulnerable. Believe me, you are the one that knows. Nobody, even a technical professional, a cybersecurity professional, will not be able to tell you except they ask questions. You are the one that knows where you are most vulnerable. By thinking about it, you know your day-to-day processes, you know your user practices, you know what your technical points are, you know what your tools are, you know what you have paid for, you know what the software that you have paid. There are some people that have paid for software, you don't even know if it is working. Those are some of the things I need you to do an evaluation of today. You need to start doing an evaluation of all those systems today, because that is very, very important. It's very, very important that you actually do that. I got a very interesting question. So I want us to answer that question before we round off for today. That question was, what advantage? Someone actually sent this question in my DM. He said, what advantage will understanding my risk exposure have for my business apart from being able to focus our security efforts on the vulnerable points that are discovered? Wow. One of the interesting lessons I have learned from Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu actually wrote the book, Art of War. One of his principles, know your enemy, that's attack by stratagem. I think that should be chapter 2 or 3. If you have the book, it should be chapter 2 or 3. He explains that, I'm going to read the quotes exactly as he wrote it. He said, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory that is gained, you will suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Now, what this is explaining is the fact that if you know the enemy and you know what your weak points are, that's what we're talking. That's what we are talking about, the risk exposure. You already know that this is how the enemy can come in. You do not need to fear No matter how many battles are coming in my language, they will say you stand, can't wait. You are there. You've blocked all the vulnerable points because you are able to face the battle. You are ready for war. But if you do not know yourself, but if you know yourself, now you have looked at your risk exposure and you have not looked at what threats are actually coming in. Every time you gain victory, you will still suffer a defeat. Because for every security measure that you think you are putting in place, there will still be a loophole because it is not going to target the enemy. It's not going to target the cyber attackers. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you are going to be ready for a million battles. Now, most importantly, you don't know yourself. You don't know your enemy. You have become a prey in the hands of cyber attackers because at every point in time, you will always succumb in battles. Now, what this is saying is that when you get a clear insight into what your business security exposure is, it will allow you to not only focus your cybersecurity efforts, it will allow you to be deliberate. At the same time, you will gain a strategic advantage by being able to map your risk. You will gain a strategic advantage because you can make informed defense choices. When your cybersecurity professional comes in and is telling you this, you are not only going to be asking questions, you can tell them based off of the fact that I know my organization, these are our loopholes. Why are we not doing this? Why do we have to do this when we could prioritize our efforts to this? At the same time, you can have what is called incident readiness with precision. You know how to be prepared in case there is an attack. I'm not saying that even when you have put up your security measures, an attack cannot happen. No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm just helping you understand the fact that it's going to reduce on the attacks, the probability of them penetrating into your organization. Yes, they can try to attack you, but they may not be able to log into your system. They may not be able to penetrate into your organization's network. But most importantly, even if they put down your defenses, you already have security measures in place to be able to fence them off and be able to recover ever before they are able to take advantage of your networks. When I'm saying your network, in a lot of instances, they are coming in to capture data. Ever before they are able to grab the data, you have already been able to counter with the security measures that you already have in place. I want you to understand that when you understand your risk exposure, it's not only about you being able to put in strong and good, precise security measures. No, it allows you to be able to have a smarter budget. It allows you to have stronger security controls, and it allows faster recovery when an incident happens. You need to understand that all this will not only be critical to your growth, but it also allows your partners. When I say partners in this instance, I mean your clients, I mean the vendors that you are working with, to have a high level of trust in your organization. Wow. It's been a beautiful session today. Like I always say, I love answering your questions. This is a community. We are trying to build a community where our responsibility is to support each other. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Endeavor to send in more questions. If I get more questions, then I will do like a question and answer session so that we can all get answers to the questions that are actually bugging our minds and our spirits. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me today. I believe we had a great session. Don't forget to join me on Thursday as we learn how to create a simple risk management plan that will be based on the risk exposure that you have learned today. So I'm going to advise you, endeavor to discover what your risk exposure looks like before Thursday so that you can use that to build a simple risk management plan for your organization. I don't want you to wait for cyber attacks to teach you the hard way. Like I said, I was boggled before I had to learn the hard way, and I was not proactive enough. But the next time they came in, I was ready. Most importantly, I need you to be proactive and protect what you have spent time, efforts, and money building. Until I see you on Thursday, have a beautiful session. Don't forget to send in your questions.